Advice is, I don't know, it was a lot, like a lot of the tunes, it was improvisation at home. Just press record on my tape machine and just started playing the guitar. And then what I sort of do, you know, if I've got some sort of sections, I just put them all together, add some drums. You know, I will play the guitar, add drums, add some bass, and then I'll just start to improvise a vocal over the top using sort of vowel type noises. The lyrics don't sort of make much sense really, that's why. I think because the lyrics were, I wrote down whatever the sort of rough lyrics sounded like. So it has some sort of a rough meaning, but with a lot of the lyrics there's sort of a vague quality really. There's not much storytelling apart from, you know, the last song maybe gets a little bit more succinct or whatever, descriptive. So it's got a message to you, Rudy, in it, which is a kind of a little thing to spot, like Where's Wally? There's a kind of a bit of another song in there, just for fun. But really it's just a splurge of adolescence, which I still seem to be capable of, sadly. But like I've said, you know, you're still 20 in your brain, whatever age you are really, whatever age you are later on. So. But really it's about people telling you what to do and you don't want to do what they want, you don't want to do what they tell you. City Hall, there's another improvisation. I improvised a guitar and I realised it had this sort of starkness to it and chords moving unexpectedly to other chords that may not usually follow that chord, and it's sort of, it's odd, you know, because it's a song, a lot of these songs weren't written, they just sort of happened first go. And I just put a drum machine on it because I was just really tired of traditional drum sounds by that point. And I just thought, well, what happened? I'll just put a drum machine on this, because what I have at home is just cheap drum machines. So I play them like that, pressing on the pads. And then there's a little bit of sort of kind of a, it's a sort of a Mickey take. It's a kind of a noir funk disco, but terribly un-black, you know. It's sort of, I mean, there's nothing syncopated or soul-y about it. It's all pretty straight up, and yet it's a kind of a particular tempo that actually makes you start to move. I find that's kind of, you know, interesting. And a lot of my favourite dance music has pretty much straight rhythms. It's pretty straight stuff. James Brown and all of that. The drums are pretty straight. It's just the other elements of the sound that are making you want to move, and it's obviously a tempo which gets you moving too. So City Hall, I suppose some influence of Can at the end. Really, I mean, it's not nothing. All I feel about that song is going through a city that's dark and street lights are going, and the ground is wet, and you're going somewhere but you don't know where you're going. I guess that's the beginning of the story of the album. You're going somewhere, you don't know where you're going. What'll it take? I mean, it doesn't say anything. That was another improvisation I did. A lot of these songs, it's so funny, really, think about it, because I didn't actually write them, I just played them, and they're all sort of first goes. So what'll it take to make you people dance? What'll it take to make you people dance? I don't know what's wrong with me, I don't know what's wrong with me, I don't know what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me. It's just another, it's sort of they're sort of all apathy anthems really, loser groove, apathy anthems. It's just, the older I get, I'm more apathetic now than I was when I was a teenager. I was a fairly sort of springy teenager, looking forward to everything. But you know, I prefer apathy. And really, that's the kind of what's wrong with me. Like everyone feels, you know. And I hate to say things like it, you know, misunderstood, isolated. But that's really how I feel. But really, it's an excuse to try and get people to, you know, just dance music in the most sort of geeky misfit way possible. That's not cool. It's not cool. It's not sexy. It's just noise and rhythm and a pointless question. What's wrong with me? Yeah, meat and drink and pollinate. That's another thing about I suppose. Gosh, I mean, you know, it might be about twitchy curtains, the underbelly of perversion sexually with Britain, British people, and particularly young people. I've seen that programme, The Joy of Teen Sex, and it's really flipping weird what they're getting up to. Teenagers these days, they're getting up to things that you don't get around, that you do when you're 50 to spice up your sex life. They're doing it already, so it kind of freaks me out. And there's some, you know, it's about going out. You meet, you drink, and you pollinate. I suppose I didn't want to use the word fuck, so I thought pollinate was a bit more politer. But basically meeting, getting drunk enough for you to interact sexually or emotionally, and to dance about, and maybe you'll end up with a Brian Ferry, maybe you'll end up with someone who's short, but if you wear your dodgy Mac, you know, or your sexy skirt, you know, you stand a better chance, you get a better chance of meeting someone. It really is about that. And I suppose there's a creepy, dark side to it, sort of, about women getting themselves a man. I suppose it's from that perspective. I mean, again, this was another improvised song. So the subject matter really is all accidental. It just happened that way. I like the idea of women going out to try and hook themselves with Brian Ferry, but being really drunk and going home with kind of Willie Carson or something instead, or, you know, something not quite the same. And they get the Ann Summers clothes on. You know, I've got a Mac on, I've got nothing underneath. Ooh. You know, women getting blokes like spiders, you know, in flies. Meet cattle market sort of clubs. That's after the geek groove goes to the big cattle market. Oh, the truth, yeah, the truth is bleak. I had this, probably the longest song. It's kind of like a bleak thing slotted in the middle about just a wasteland. I don't know what it is, something dark and nasty. I don't think it's war, it could be war, disease, drugs. But I just had these sort of thoughts about needles or silver shards falling from the sky and cutting people in half and wasting whole countries, love being destroyed forever, and about nothing that you can do, people relying on gods to pray to. It's not going to make any difference. It's pretty, it's like, you know, doom laden, and I like the idea that it's semi-industrial, a little bit industrial, a bass-driven thing, you know, like there's a couple of songs that were written on bass rather than guitar. So, I mean, this was kind of one of them. I think, yeah, it's not meant to have an ounce of optimism. That's all. It's all about doom. Yeah, I suppose this is post-apocalyptic, and I had a dream about being under the water in a submarine, and the earth had turned into the surface of a woman's body, and I was thinking, well, does a woman's body have 7 valleys somewhere? And then I sort of started thinking, I mean, it almost went Yellow Submarine-y, where you have this sort of massive surface, this sort of pink surface that went on forever underneath this sea. And then you see, there's obviously valleys in a woman's body that you kind of think of immediately, but there is many valleys. And I sort of like the idea of being in, you know, like the what is that? The Tiny Little Adventure, sort of, the Amazing something, where they shrink a spaceship or a submarine that goes through the blood vessels of a person. It was that kind of thing, really. Apart from it was, it's a dreadfully dirty old man kind of subject matter, I suppose. The idea of sort of riding a submarine under the ocean, and the bed of the ocean is a woman. But it is about, you know, the end. It's the end of the world, and we're living in submarines, and the bottom of the sea is basically a massive woman the size of a universe. And it's kind of has, I suppose it's the most psychedelic the record gets. I suppose it's the most sort of Syd Barrett psychedelic dance, indie dance crossover, but it sort of has a lot of noise and a lot of, it's not really meant to be a very serious song, really. I mean, the vocals are not terribly high. I don't think the lyrics are particularly important. It's meant to sound like you're listening to some really loud music with your head in the bathwater after, you know, you're stoned. So I suppose that's really the sound that I was getting at. I suppose that after the trippy section in the middle, this just comes back to reality when you're out of a club, and you know, kicking out time in any city is quite dangerous, and that's the sort of thing where you can't get home and you're stuck in a city, and it's volatile and violent, and you're scared, and you live miles away but you're not going to get home, and the place takes a turn for the worse, you know. And it's the thing about smashing your face in a taxi queue, things like that. Men taking their tops off and doing press-ups outside the kebab house, and even the girls being violent and stuff like that. And there's this kind of get back down the M1 because we don't like you, or get back up the M1 because we don't like you, and this sort of north and south thing. No, it was all kind of mucking about the idea of just being lost in a city. Happened to me in Essex, you know, getting stuck in some town with a violent crowd, and getting beaten up because you danced to the Smiths at a party. You know, it's that sort of thing, you know, when you're 16, 17, and you've had some violence done on you, but you can't really go home, cry. So it's a bit of a bummer situation. So it's kind of about that, you know. I find that interesting. First time Blur came up to Leeds, Damon said, "Hello, we're Blur, we're from London." And someone said, "Well, fuck off back down the M1 then." So it's kind of, it has that sort of element to it. I mean, obviously he was asking for it. Bar Singer, ooh, I mean, that's kind of about the nasty. It's kind of the meet and drink and pollinate girl. It's kind of like her arch enemy, the kind of sociopathic man who is abusive and sort of scum of the earth. Is going to entrap and abuse people. Pretty nasty, really. I'm sure that, you know, there are people like that who use drink and drugs to get their their way with people. It's about that. I don't know why it's called Bar Singer. I just couldn't think of anything else. But maybe he does a bit of singing in a bar. You know, he's that kind of... It's sort of like American Psycho, I suppose. But not quite as glamorous and well-dressed. Knife in the Cast. Here's a trip out again. It's sort of... this was improvised, this was written on the bass. Actually what appears on the album is my demo of it, and that's what I recorded at home pretty much, but we added another bass and a bit more guitar, and the vocal was a mumble, but then I extracted what I understood from that and wrote the lyrics in a kind of a loose way. But the lyrics is just kind of a very dry, parched kind of dream, really, a nightmare. A sort of bad visuals, really. I mean, a knife in a cast, I suppose. I'm not going to say what I see when I hear that. It might be the same as what anybody else sees, but there's something not very nice about it, and pushing glass. You know, it's just a collection of sort of sentences that are not very nice, and it's just purely unconscious drivel. It's not particularly meant to be a narrative of any sort. It's a kind of a outpouring of sort of parched visuals, really, from my own head. Yeah. It's sort of like that idea of, you know, it's 6 in the morning and you bump into somebody who's been out all night and they're off their nut and they're falling about on the curb, and they're sort of trying to see who you are, and are you all right? You know, it happened to me when I bumped into somebody one morning who was obviously really hadn't been to bed and was all over the place, and you know, sort of grabs hold of you as he's falling to the ground, and then you go down as well, and you're like, oh God, and he's all greasy and horrible, and smells, and then you think, gosh, this guy might not be alive for much longer. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of about... I had this great film called Wise Blood, about walking along in your Sunday suit, eyes on fire. That doesn't come from the film, that's just kind of like my, you know, what I feel like. My eyes are on fire quite a lot if I don't wear my glasses. And I suppose it's the woozy nature of some sort of conversation that doesn't make any sense for someone who's off their nut in the morning, and I don't know how it ends up. Perhaps you do the same thing, or just go on your way and get your milk for a cup of tea. I don't know. So it sort of ends the next morning with the glass, with the dreg friend still trying to claw his way home.